gang members have been terrorizing the city's juvenile detention center as part of a long-running feud between rival neighborhoods, Norfolk police said. In July, detectives investigated a gang mob assault at the center, Detective Tammy Mendoza said in court documents. The attackers were part of a familiar group, the Gotti Gang. Based in uptown neighborhoods like Huntersville, Young Terrace and Calvert Square, the Gotti Gang has been fighting for the better part of 2 years with the South Side, Berkeley, Compostela and Diggstown. Gotti Gang members have used juvenile detention centers as recruiting stations, Mendoza said. They target new inmates and intimidate smaller ones. When that doesn't work, they attack. If an inmate is from the South Side, or they think he's disrespected the gang, they jump him. Because of the Gotti Gang, guards have isolated several inmates in protective custody and switched up how they're housed generally, Mendoza said. It is a constant problem for the Norfolk Detention Center and Norfolk City Jail to keep rival gang members housed separately, the detective added. Tommy Clark, assistant superintendent at the detention center, didn't return messages asking for comment Wednesday. On Thursday, city spokeswoman Lori Crouch said no one from the center would talk about what is going on inside the facility. Sheriff Joe Barrett said jail guards had problems with gang violence until last year when administrators changed how they house inmates. Once they learned and implemented those practices, things got better. But jails built to hold adult criminals are not the same as facilities designed for children, said Major Mandy Lambert, a director at the Prince William Manassas Regional Jail and a National Institute of Corrections expert on classifying inmates. The guards are different, too. At jails, they are trained law enforcement officers, while those in juvenile centers are not sworn officers and serve more as counselors and mentors, Lambert said. Moreover, state law affords juvenile inmates more rights, and officials see them through a different lens, as wayward children who need education and guidance to get back on the right path, not as criminals. Juvenile is a whole different bird, Lambert said. It makes a really big difference. But, Lambert added, the bottom line responsibility is the same in both types of facilities: make sure everyone is safe and secure. That didn't happen at the Norfolk Juvenile Detention Center on July 21, Mendoza wrote in a search warrant affidavit. During a lockdown after lunch, an inmate asked a 17-year-old where he was from, Mendoza said after talking with staff. The 17-year-old yelled back, "Berkeley, one of the South Side neighborhoods." Lockdown ended about 10 minutes later, the detective said. The teen came out of his cell, and another 17-year-old, Shanard Devontae Wilson, punched him in the side of the head. The victim fell to the ground, and Tijian Devon Speller, 17, punched him over and over, Mendoza said. A third attacker, 19-year-old Jonathan Cortez Beatty, kicked him in the head. All three were attacking at once, she said. Guards tried to break it up, but a couple fell to the ground, Mendoza said. One video shows Wilson breaking free from a guard, grabbing a chair and hitting the Berkeley teen 5 to 8 times before a guard puts him up against a wall. All three attackers are Gotti Gang members, Mendoza said. The victim was not part of a gang. Wilson, Speller, and Beatty only attacked this child because of where he lived for the benefit of Gotti Gang, she said. This was not an isolated incident, Mendoza said. Wilson and other Gotti Gang members often go after inmates from Berkeley or other parts of the city they're at war with. But Wilson is the most troublesome, Norfolk Gang Squad detectives found during their investigation. He has been transferred often between the Norfolk, Chesapeake and Williamsburg detention centers, Mendoza said. In each, he recruits Gotti Gang members through intimidation and threats of violence, targeting new inmates and smaller ones he thinks he can overpower. He seems to revel in it, Mendoza said. Lambert said, in her county, judges order juveniles like Wilson to adult jails, where guards can house and control them more effectively. Administrators at the Chesapeake and Williamsburg juvenile detention centers said they didn't know what the Norfolk detective was talking about and denied having problems with gang violence or recruiting. One day in the Norfolk Center, Mendoza said, Wilson was sitting in a chair when another inmate got in his face, wanting to fight. Wilson simply flashed a gang-related hand signal, leading other inmates to brutally attack. Mr. Wilson thinks that the rules do not apply to him, and the more trouble that he gets into, the more street credibility he gains, Mendoza said. Mr. Wilson boasted about a fight that happened in a detention facility on social media, and it only gained him fame. Wilson is a constant problem inside the facility. Norfolk police charged Wilson, Speller and Beatty with malicious wounding by mob, assault by mob, attempt to commit a felony and gang participation, police spokeswoman Corporal Melinda Ray said in an email. Wilson was also charged with destroying property. Their cases are working through the court system. Neither Police Chief Larry Boone nor anyone else from the department would talk about the case because detectives are still investigating, Ray said. Like Wilson, Speller has a reputation. He's locked up because he was part of a group from uptown that drove to the South Side in June 2016 and shot 4 people, according to court documents. Earlier that night, the group attended a candlelight vigil for Don Brown Jr., a 17-year-old Gotti gang member gunned down days before. Mourners blamed South Side gang members. Speller and 3 others, at least 2 of whom were uptown gang members, eventually drove in an SUV to Berkeley, Speller told detectives. He said he thought they were just going to listen to music and get high. But gunfire suddenly erupted from inside the car. Boom, 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 Speller told police. All 4 shooting victims survived, although prosecutors said some needed surgery and intense rehab. They didn't know the shooters and were just hanging out after going to a wedding. After the SUV crashed, Speller bolted, but police quickly caught him. He eventually pleaded guilty to 4 counts of malicious wounding and a related gun charge and admitted to being a Gotti gang member as part of his agreement with prosecutors. He's awaiting sentencing. Barron said he was one of 3 Norfolk Sheriff's Office employees who went to an American Jail Association seminar last year to learn up-to-date practices in the field. Lambert was their teacher. Like in many jails around the country, then Sheriff Bob McCabe was putting members of the same gang in the same unit, separate from their rivals. Trouble is, if the same gang makes up a majority of inmates in a unit, they can bully those who aren't in a gang. Lambert taught them to balance out the power dynamic, put an equal number of gang members, their rivals and non-gang members in the same unit. Neither gang will overpower the other, and both will make sure their enemies aren't recruiting the third group. You have a balance there, Barron said. Barron and company implemented Lambert's lessons, the sheriff said. Since then, they haven't had any problems with gang violence or recruiting.